So I'm now joined by Carl Knightley from A Faith in Later Life. Hello, Carl. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So firstly, I mentioned you're from Faith in Later Life. Just tell us briefly a little bit about what is Faith in Later Life.
So Faith in Later Life is a Christian charity. It was set up just over 2 years ago, and we want to equip Christians to do three things: to reach, serve and empower older people everywhere through the local church, and then just to try to encourage older Christians in their faith.
Nice. And we are going to be speaking about them three things that you mentioned throughout this interview. But of course, at the moment with the coronavirus, elderly people are probably feeling a lot more isolated than normal. Maybe some don't have family members and they sometimes can feel lonely and isolated without the coronavirus. And I've heard you say in a speech for Faith in Later Life that you want to be a voice to the elderly. So in what ways have Faith in Later Life seen the coronavirus affect the elderly and the people that you help?
It's really hard, isn't it? As you said, that older people are often isolated and lonely beforehand. And now it's got a lot worse for all of us, especially for those who are living on their own. So what we're seeking to do is just to continue to talk to churches about the importance of remembering your older congregation and also thinking about the older people in your local community, and then trying to give practical suggestions and advice about how to best do that.
And you mentioned practical advice here. What kind of practical things can maybe the church themselves be doing to help the elderly still feel part of their church community?
So I think that the church is doing lots of really good things. Churches are doing online services and that sort of thing. And I think one thing that we can do where we have older people in our networks and our lives, we can be encouraging them to try to get them involved in these sorts of things. But then, of course, we need to accept that older people might not want to do these things. There's a wide range of older people. But what churches can be doing is remembering those older people, setting up rotas to phone people, just trying to make sure we all take ownership for a community, even though we might not be in a physical building anymore.
That's a nice idea. I like that, having a church of rotas, so there's always someone that's speaking to the elderly, because there might be some elderly out there that don't really understand the modern technology. They might not be able to do these video calls, and especially if they don't have internet. What would you advise people how they can keep in communication without these technologies?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of older people who are, getting into WhatsApp video and these sorts of things, but we also know that there are 2.5 million people over the age of 75 who've never used the internet. And so, in my house, we've got a list on the fridge of older people who we try to call once a week. The church has a rota where they ensure that somebody phones someone just to make sure they've had their shopping, or if they need a prescription, or actually just to phone and to say hi. Because at the moment, we tend to be asking people how they feel because we actually mean it as a society. So it's just really important to keep that conversation going. So an older person just at the very least knows that there's somebody who's interested for their welfare and who they are as a person.
Definitely. And for the younger generation, in what ways can you advise them and encourage them to reach out to the older generation maybe?
We're hearing about lots of really good ideas where younger people can write letters or draw pictures for local care homes, for example. It might be that younger people can leave something at the front door for an older person, a picture, a rock that's painted. We've got lots of Love NHS rocks being painted. Of course, all of these things need to be done with hygiene in mind, and we need to make sure that we're not passing anything on to anybody. But again, it's just about engaging and thinking about other people intentionally. And then, if we have relationships with these older people in our church, we'll have an understanding of how best we can support them and encourage them.
Yes, indeed. And you do have some resources on your website as well, don't you, of Faith in Later Life? And you have activities for older adults during COVID-19. What's involved in that?
To just provide free materials for churches, for those who are online, for church leaders, just to give them practical suggestions, one of which is, activities you might want to undertake when you're in a care home or when you're in lockdown, thinking about how to engage with someone living with dementia at this time, anxiety, lots of these sorts of things. In terms of activities, you might be able to pick up the phone and have some sort of activity on the phone, or play a game of virtual snakes and ladders with your granddaughter. There's lots of different things we can do, and we've got loads of free blogs and thoughts just to try to get people thinking about how they can best engage with people in this difficult time.
So if people want to find out more about Faith in Later Life and get hold of these resources, how can they do that?
Yeah, so Faith in Later Life is that we exist in terms of volunteers in churches, but at the moment that's a bit tricky. So we do have our website. So faithinlaterlife.org is the place to go. We have over half of our 150 odd resources are free to download. So obviously that's for church leaders, that's for regular church people in inverted commas who are online. And there is you need to take the initiative there and then see how you can then share those resources and get those ideas to reach out to and engage with those older people who might not be online.
Yes, great. Thank you, Carl. Thank you for giving us an insight into Faith in Later Life and what we can be doing to reach out to the elderly and lonely during this time. Thank you so much for joining me. And I just want to encourage our viewers to check out the website and download them resources.